And we're now joined live on the line by Sarah Baxter, who is the director of the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting in New York, and joins us now. Hi to you, Sarah.
Hello, John. Good to see you.
Lovely to have you with us as always, Sarah. We'll talk about one of the stories that are in the air. There are a couple to discuss. One of them being the death of Lindsey Graham, that high-profile Republican senator who was so close to Donald Trump, although that was certainly in earlier days not at all the case. Donald Trump's now suggesting that Lindsey Graham should be replaced by Graham's sister for the remainder of his Senate term. It's a recommendation from Trump to the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster. Graham died at the age of 71 just a couple of days ago. Sarah, it's not at all unknown, is it, for family members, quite often the widow of a dead senator, to replace them for a period?
That's absolutely right. But in the case of Darlene Graham, this was a beloved sister who Lindsey actually adopted because both their parents died. She was considerably younger than him, about 9 years younger. She was only 13. He was in his 20s when their parents died. And he later adopted her so that if anything happened to him, she would benefit. And funnily enough, sadly enough, really, I should say, Here is Darlene stepping into her big brother's shoes. She was definitely the closest person to Lindsey Graham. And in a way, it feels almost right. People are talking about it as, she's the Nepo sister and all the rest. But actually, President Trump said it would be a way to honor Lindsey. There isn't long to go. There's an election in November, and there's an absolute bun fight about to break out in South Carolina as to who gets this fairly safe Republican seat. So going for Darlene seems a good way to honor Graham's memory because he did so much for his sister.
Yeah, well, as you say, for the fact that I'm going to come back in a moment to the way that Lindsey Graham evolved, if that's the right word, in his own politics over the years, especially since the arrival of Donald Trump for his 2 terms. But should I take it? Because I have no idea. Should I take it if Donald Trump is recommending Graham's sister? He thinks Graham's sister is going to be sympathetic to the Donald Trump cause.
Yes, and she's just going to vote with whichever way the Republicans tell her to, I presume. And it was very important for the Republicans to get someone in pronto because they only have a small majority. Mitch McConnell, former Senate Majority Leader, is out of action now in hospital. And they were looking a bit threadbare. But of course, Donald Trump loves to insert himself into the political process. And the governor of South Carolina was going to have his moment announcing the successor when Trump effectively pushed him out of the way and said, I'll take over from here, thank you, and announced that it was going to be Darlene.
Yeah, I asked the question because the United States Senate is absolutely on a razor's edge when it comes to votes, and there are some senators on the Republican side who have been, just a few, but it only takes a few, who've been happy to vote with the Democrats on such things as the war in Iran. Now, when it comes to Lindsey Graham himself, that's been quite a journey he's been on in fairly recent years, from being a ferocious critic of Donald Trump to becoming an absolutely solid supporter.
You're absolutely right, John. And it wasn't so long ago. It was in 2016 when it looked like Donald Trump wasn't necessarily going to become president, but actually did, that Lindsey Graham said that, the best way to make America great again was for Donald Trump to rot in hell or something. Something words to that effect. So you can see what a critic he was. But at the same time, I'm actually going to argue, John, that Lindsey Graham didn't change that much. I first met Lindsey Graham when he was John McCain's right-hand man. And Donald Trump was so rude about McCain, a former prisoner of war in Vietnam. Donald Trump called him a loser. He'd stood against Barack Obama on the Republican ticket in 2008 and had lost the presidency. So again, Donald Trump wasn't impressed by that. He didn't win. So it seemed extraordinary that Lindsey Graham could switch from effectively hero-worshipping John McCain to lauding Donald Trump. But here's the thing. I think Lindsey Graham loved being at the center of things. He loved being next to really big, consequential figures. And McCain was a big figure, very different views, much more of a hawk than Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump has been a very consequential president. And Lindsey Graham just loved to be that whisperer, that conduit, the person who could get along with them, be his great friend. Donald Trump's described Lindsey Graham as being like family to him. And Meghan McCain, John McCain's daughter, says exactly the same thing about Lindsey Graham being family to her. And I met Lindsey Graham first on a battle bus with McCain, and he loved to be the person there who could speak for McCain, who could get McCain's ear, who you'd have to go through to get to McCain. You know, and he loved being that centre of attention.
Yes.
Well, Peter, I think.
I think you're absolutely right that played a big part in it. But is there something a bit more positive like this? I mean, and I think Lindsey Graham did actually say, you know, and that's how everyone call him Lindsey Graham, like Graham Parsons. That's how Americans say it. Didn't he actually say at one point that there wouldn't be any point if he didn't have influence? And that's why he's moved between different Republican leaders. And, you know, as we saw, the last thing he did was a friendly visit to Zelensky, giving his support to Zelensky on Friday before his sudden death on Saturday. And, you know, you can argue, I would argue that, you know, it would have been a lot worse for Ukraine from the point of view of the relationship with the Trump administration had Lindsey Graham not been there. Would you agree?
That's such an important point. I totally agree, Adam, because as we know, he was in Ukraine meeting Zelensky only on Friday and died the following day. And so much so that sort of conspiracy theories started to abound about, you know, because he was so close to the Ukrainian leader, but also close to Donald Trump. And I certainly feel that Zelensky certainly feels that he has lost a great ally in Graham, somebody who could really plead Ukraine's case to Donald Trump. And I do know that Republicans who support help for Ukraine are very worried about this older generation of sort of post-Cold War hawks who are really losing ground to the young MAGA crowd. And notably, J.D. Vance praised Lindsey Graham, said he really liked him, but said he disagreed with him on many issues. And one of them undoubtedly was Ukraine. And so this new generation coming through has very different views. And I think America, well, friends of Ukraine, put it that way, will feel Lindsey Graham's loss.
And also he was a big, I actually appeared with him on Fox News during the visit of Donald Trump on his first state visit. And what was very clear was, like those traditional Republicans, he revered this country to a certain extent.
Yes, he did. He totally valued America's allies, and first among them very often would be Britain. Another person that he had more or less on speed dial was Israel's leader as well. So anybody who was a friend to the US, he was their friend. And he liked to be the conduit to all these incredible world leaders. Now, who's going to take his place? I mean, Marco Rubio is Secretary of State, but he can't play that same rather informal role that Lindsey Graham could. You know, somebody could ring Lindsey Graham and he'd say, well, look, I'll talk to Donald Trump. Just wait, I'll get him on the line. You don't have to go through all those formal procedures that you have to when dealing with a cabinet member. And he was invaluable as a friend of Britain in that role. Yes,
I mean, sort of hearing that, recognising all of that, is also interesting, isn't it? It's an exercise in political psychology as well as politics. And he was up front in past interviews about what led to his journey from being a super critical anti-Trumpite to being a super loyal pro-Trumper. He said it was about, one, influence, as you say, and also about relevance. He wanted to be there wielding relevance, and in that way, sort of just skating over the million-mile journey from his views on Trump then to the views on Trump, pretty much to the moment of his death. And we can think of politicians in our politics who've crossed floors, changed coats, who would say, look, ultimately, if they were being very frank about it, it is about influence and it's about relevance.
Well, one person might think of is Peter Mandelson, who moved between Labour leaders quite effectively.
But then the only thing that surprised me is Lindsey Graham was very critical of Donald Trump on January 6, 2021.
Yes, on the day, yeah.
On the day, the riot at the Capitol, and then just decided to forget all about what happened that day and be nice again to Donald Trump. But of course, it was inevitable. Once Donald Trump looked like he might be a serious player again, that Lindsey Graham was going to adapt.
Yeah.
And you could argue that he used his influence very responsibly.
But I mean, on that January 6th, he was actually no different from almost all the Republican senators who were very. Mitch McConnell was the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. Was very, very shaken about it, very critical of what had happened. But they concluded a couple of weeks later that they weren't going to impeach Trump, probably because. He was too powerful, and they were worried about their own political futures if they went against him. And in that decision, they kept him alive to run again, and the rest is history.
It took about a week, I think, for Lindsey Graham to saying on the floor of the House, "That's it, I'm done. I've had enough of this." And about a week later, he was a guest on Air Force One with Donald Trump's best friend.
All I'm saying, he was no worse than the rest of the Republican senators who went through a very similar.
Yeah, his was a very visible journey. So I want to ask you this about today's news. Some of the analysis that came back to this was, you never can be quite sure what Donald Trump's going to say next. But today we heard Donald Trump, after the sort of on-off and now more on than off conflict with Iran, saying, okay, America's going to continue the blockade of Iranian shipping in Iranian ports, but also we're going to demand 20% of the value of every cargo that travels the strait when we give them a military escort. 20%, Sarah. I mean, that as the editor of Lloyd's List told me earlier on, that makes Iranian demand seem modest by comparison. What do you make of reading that on Truth Social?
Well, Donald Trump has always thought that people should pay to play, and if America's going to provide security in the Strait of Hormuz, then the countries that use that strait are going to have to pay America.
But 20%, Sarah, 20% is a ludicrous idea.
Well, that's what we thought about Donald Trump's tariffs, wasn't it? And now, only a few weeks ago, maybe less actually, Marco Rubio said, no, it's against international law to charge for passage in international waters, and the Strait of Hormuz has to be open and free to everybody. But Donald Trump, as we know, has gone backwards and forwards on this issue. And if he sees a chance to try and grab something for America out of this, he will. Because I think he does recognize now that it's been a political disaster for him, launching this war and then finding that we can't even go back to the status quo ante, that we're worse off than we were before. So someone's going to have to pay, and he's determined it's not going to be him politically.
No. I can't see how this is enforceable. I just think it's desperate nonsense.
Well, his own side have said that it's not policy and it can't be done, that no one should be charging any tariffs. Marco Rubio said that.
I mean, what's he going to do?
But not since Trump's post.
Well, not since, of course.
Trump says these things, and every practical and every other measure, it seems to be absolutely absurd. And our own, Catherine Phil, talking to her later on, she said, look, Trump just says these things because he says these things. But that in itself, should we get into the habit of saying what is utterly abnormal and ludicrous is somehow normal? Because it's not. He's the president, and to say a thing like that.
I mean, it would only work if he had the cooperation with the Iranians. Basically, the arrangement would have to be, okay, they say they're not paying, so have a free shot and hit the tanker.
There's a word for that, isn't there?
Yeah, extortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. I don't think it is going to happen, but it could happen. We all thought that the tariff idea was ludicrous, and yet he's been raising them and lowering them and raising them again, threatening countries with them, and I think he's going to do the same with the Strait of Hormuz. But it's also Groundhog Day, though, because we've been discussing what's happening in the Strait now for weeks, months.
Yes.
And we're back to a blockade again. It's disturbing.
But I have to say, just going back to the start of the programme, what I want to hear on this is the reaction of the Chancellor, a senior Treasury Minister, the Prime Minister. This is what they should be talking about. Instead, we've got this navel-gazing and record assessing when they should be thinking about this, because it has real life.
Foreign Secretary's commented on.
Sure, but
what does the Foreign Secretary say?
Not much, as usual.
Okay, right, okay. Well, I'll look forward to hearing. Maybe someone will raise it at question time in the House. That would be, question time. It is the final PMQs for the Prime Minister, so interesting if that comes. It's interesting when a lot of things come up, and it'll be a spectacle in itself.